star of professional wrestling, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This is Wrestling is for Losers, a podcast that's not fake, it's predetermined.
What's up, losers? It's me, Shoe Boots, and I'm closing the audio file. Tonight, we are dabbling into the darker side of wrestling, according to some, and the best side of wrestling, according to others. We are getting baptized in the cult of Cornette. That's right, we'll be reviewing the Jim Cornette Experience and introducing Coltrane to this whole side of wrestling fandom. Plus, we got this week's news, including an appearance from the Great One on SmackDown. But first, let's meet our co-hosts. First of all, he's a guy that always overpromises and always underdelivers when it comes to his intros. Let's keep that trend going. It's Texas Crazy Horse, everybody.
Oh, I really did this time, gentlemen. I went on the internet and downloaded ChatGPT, whatever it's called. And I decided to let it do an intro for me since I couldn't do it. So you gotta be real specific to make sure it does the right stuff.
Real Pacific? Okay.
This is not gonna go well. Anyways, I have it right here, and I'm going to do my intro straight from this app. And this is gonna be the best one yet. All right, you ready? Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. That's it.
Great. Well,
wow. You know what? I don't think AI is going to take over anything.
Well,
I think we're going to be just fine.
I will say maybe it will take over for Tex. I will say maybe.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. I'm not too worried about AI now for some reason. I don't know. I mean, chat room's exploding. Best intro to date. So
Yeah.
Well done, Tex.
Now, I did have to pay $9.99 for that. So
Right.
I need my money.
Need some compensation here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just adjusting my mic while I'm talking. Well, great. Thanks. Welcome to the show. Now, for our other under deliverer, folks, our other co-host, you've already heard him, but he hasn't watched wrestling in 30 years, and now he watches it for 30 hours a day. It is Coltrane, everybody. Hello, sir.
Hello, Shoe Boots. 30 years. 30 years that these eyes have seen the titans of the turnbuckles making moose milk on the mat of madness. These raging rhinos rocking and rolling ringside while their retinas burn radish red. You see these people, these picturesque people of power presenting pectoral perfection, inviting you to a puberty-packed party of pain, pizzazz, and protein-pumped prima donnas. It's a boot time, Boots. These buxom, bulbous brochachos brought branded bombs and brazen beatings with unbelievable bite. My name is Coltrane. We got a lot to talk about today, but when it comes to wrestling, I'm all in.
Oh,
Yes.
mansies.
There it is.
Still
We're going to come
got
up with still got it. We're going to come up with a new one, I think, next week. We're going to have a new letter. I got to figure out what the letter is going to be, Boots.
It's going to be X.
Ooh. Right. Make it as hard as possible for me. Hello, it's Xerox. Perfect.
I'm Xeroxing my X-rays
Yes, exactly.
of Xavier.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
All right. Interesting challenge.
All right. Well, it's been another week of wrestling, and I got to be honest, it has been kind of a blur, but there's been a few highlights. I'm really digging the whole tournament building up to MJF. We now know MJF versus Samoa Joe next week. So there's been, for those of you that don't watch AEW regularly, this is a regular AEW thing. Tony Khan loves himself a tournament. And whenever there's a little bit of a lull in the storyline, he just goes and has one. So we've been having this fun tournament kind of building up to MJF's next challenger. And it's going to happen on Dynamite next week because it's their big Grand Slam show where they do the Arthur Ashe Stadium. So I've been digging that. Also, I gotta say, man, Colt, I don't know what you were watching this week, but and I know we're gonna talk about The Rock, but I gotta say, like, you and I have been like kind of trying to temper your expectations for The Miz every time you sing his praises.
Yes. Right.
But he's kind of on fire right now. He's kind of rocking it, isn't he?
Right. That's the thing about The Miz, right? So last week I talked about, as someone that's brand new to wrestling, right? I've never seen it. The Miz, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know his history. I don't know that he's this kind of older man who's been around and he's kind of on the tail end of his career. To me, he's phenomenal. I think he's playing a great heel. He's great on the mic. He's decent in the ring. And I've been impressed. I'm over here cheering for The Miz, being like, he's not that bad. And everyone's, oh, no, Colt, no. You're adorable, Coltrane. But The Miz is nothing. It's over for him. But I'm telling you, I thought he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I did mention that he might become world champion in the next 5 years. That's a little extreme. That might not happen. I'm thinking, possibly.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Yeah, no, I needed a time machine last week. Last show was a little rough on old Colty here. All right, as the new guy. All right, I'm the new guy.
I can't wait to do
wrestling
another
scene.
episode like that.
Fantastic.
Now, I gotta tell you guys, I didn't really want to bring this up on the show because it's kind of personal, but I might have to divorce my wife.
Whoa. Wow. Here it is on Wrestling is for Losers.
Yes.
Episode 22. He's just going to drop that bomb.
I'm just going to drop it out of here. And she's in the room. I've already told her. SmackDown this week was in Denver.
You're in Denver.
I'm just an hour south of Denver.
Oh, no.
Ooh.
And my wife didn't do research and find out that The Rock was going to be there. So I didn't show up.
Wait a sec.
So I didn't get to go see it live.
Let me get this clear. I thought you were about to say that you didn't know that like you wanted to go to the show, but she didn't. That's what I thought you were going to say. But what you're saying is you knew the show was there. You opted not to go.
Yes.
And you're blaming your wife because the best kept secret of the week was not known to her.
Yes.
Okay.
That seems valid. That seems like a valid divorce.
Now, okay.
I was so mad. Okay, I'm sitting here, have my little bit of whiskey. I'm watching this on Saturday. She could have prepped me. She knew what happened. Pat McAfee walks out, and I love Pat McAfee. Mm-hmm. I'm a Pat McAfee guy.
You've stated it many times on this show.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh my God, wife, why'd you let me miss this? She's like, oh yeah, he's on there. Then The Rock comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was it. And now you're a single man. Right.
Yeah. And by the way, Tex, Colt and I we've talked, and we're going to be siding with your wife. So this is our last time hanging out with you. I'm sorry.
We're going to be character witnesses as well in the trial, probably. And it's not looking good for you, Tex, on the character witness side of things.
It was a good run.
It was a good run, right?
22 episodes. That is more than my last podcast. So I'm getting better.
Manny in the chat says, "Good news, chat. The most patient woman in the world will be back on the market soon."
Yes, that's true.
I said maybe we may get a divorce. I haven't decided yet.
All right.
Right. It's still on the table.
You're using it as leverage for her to go buy chips or something. I get it.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, yeah, you blew it, man. You blew it because that was a pop. It's always interesting to see a guy like The Rock come out because, John Cena comes out every now and then and people go nuts. But John Cena, his peak wasn't that long ago. The Rock, it's 20 years now, right? Like it's 20 years since he was like a main eventer, and he's still got a bigger pop than anyone else that in all of wrestling this week. And it's like people know who he is. And I mean,
that was legendary.
Yeah. I get that he's Dwayne Johnson. I get that he's like a celebrity, but like, I got to be honest, when I tell a lot of young people that Dwayne Johnson, used to be a wrestler, they don't know it. Like they're like, really? So fans remember this guy.
Yeah. And that was a funny thing for me because I actually missed the Attitude Era. And as I've heard, I missed probably one of the greatest eras of wrestling in general. Like I miss The Rock. I miss Stone Cold. I mean, I know their names. I know their but I really never seen them in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
As crazy as that sounds. I watched the 80s, Macho Man, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. By the way, awesome AEW. I mean, come on, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I mean, come on, right? I mean, come on. It's the Dragon. It's Ricky. So, but I missed the Attitude Era. So seeing him come out, I mean, like, and Chad is saying it too. I mean, what a pop that was.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. The crowd went ballistic. How amazing that must have felt for him as well. You know what I mean? I mean, like I was saying that about Cody Rhodes, you know, when he comes out, American Nightmare, and everyone's just going nuts and he's just taking it in. And these wrestlers, I mean, what a career, what a job to go in there and thousands of people are screaming for you. I mean, what that's got to feel like, you know, in that packed stadium. Incredible feeling. So it was great seeing him. And hasn't it been like, I heard it was like 13 years or something since The Rock had made an appearance or something. It's been a while.
I couldn't tell. I know he's made like appearances at different times, like not wrestling, but he's made appearances here and there. I don't know when the last time he wrestled is. Couldn't tell you.
Gotcha. Well, it was pretty awesome seeing him out there, man. Yeah. And I loved what he did with the crowd, with the "you're a burr, you're a burr." That was pretty amazing.
They had to censor it because it's not the Attitude Era anymore.
Yeah,
exactly.
How did you like? So you got to see your very first People's Elbow, The Rock's finisher.
Yes.
When he runs back and forth.
Yeah. Well, first he's got to like get the arms in, right? He's got to kick the arms in. Is that what he does?
He kicks
first?
the arms in, and then he does like kind of a. Then he runs over the guy, runs the other, full stop, then elbow,
then bam, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what's just so amazing about it. I saw some kind of highlight of him doing the People's Elbow because, like, when you watch something on YouTube, then it's YouTube recommends, right? So you know, you got to be careful what you click on. Like, you know, even on accident, YouTube recommends, like, oh, that's how bats mate. Okay, great. Now I've got 50 videos of bats mating. Like, that's, I mean, look, we've all been there. I mean, we've all clicked on bats mating. I mean, come on, right? That's a pretty common click, right? It's got a high click-through rate. But so then it was like highlights of The Rock doing these People's Elbows, right? You know, landing. And there was just this such great one where he paused and he did this move, and then he
just bring it.
Yeah, it was so great. I mean, what a performer. You know what I mean? Right in the middle of the match. So
he was the first wrestler that I mean, every wrestler does this to some extent, but he was the first wrestler that really kind of added these little signature pieces to every little thing that he did so that you knew it was him. And it started with the people's eyebrow. Can you do it?
I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
But he does like, he does the just bring it. He does I actually loved that he because I'm guessing that he had to let Austin Theory do that. He let Austin Theory steal his bit where he does a bit where he'll ask you something and it's like, what is your name? And then he'll be like, and you'll start to answer, it doesn't matter what your name is or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Theory got to do that. He got to interrupt Rock.
Theory got to do it to him. And then my only critique is The Rock really made Theory lay down a long time waiting for that People's Elbow. It was
right.
Because he just took him down in one move and no rock bottom, man. That's usually the move that he knocks someone out before he does the People's Elbow is the rock bottom. But I don't even know what you call that move where he like grabbed him. It was like a suplex only front forwards. I don't know.
Oh, spine buster.
Is that a spine buster?
I thought that was the Rock Top. Isn't that the Rock Top?
The Rock Top, yes.
Right. For the Rock Bottom? No. Yeah. No, they're not correct. All right.
Anyways, well, I think that's a good segue into our news section because our top story in the news is The Rock returns. The Rock showed up to beat up Austin Theory. Pat McAfee was there too. The reason this is in the news, though, is because if any of you you talk about your bat mating, well, my algorithm is dirt sheet wrestling, and every YouTube content creator is making 18 videos now about how The Rock is going to fight Roman Reigns at WrestleMania now. That
Yes.
he's back. He's back. And I guess it begs the question, is he back? I don't know. Maybe he's back. I saw he apparently spoke that he's up for doing WrestleMania now.
Yes. Well, did you hear? So he had an interview on the Pat McAfee show where he talked about that him and Roman Reigns were locked in for WrestleMania. I think was it 39?
Yeah,
Is that
last
right?
year.
Yeah. He
This
said
year,
they were
rather. This
locked
year.
in. Yeah, for WrestleMania 39. It was going to be Roman Reigns and The Rock main event WrestleMania. But he said at the very end, they couldn't get it to work out. And they had, as he said, they had to put pencils up and they couldn't make it happen. But they all got together. They toasted tequila.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned his brand of tequila. And then, and they agreed to do it. It was him, Roman, and I think Vince. They all agreed. They were locked in, but it didn't happen. And then when they talked about the new WrestleMania, he mentioned that he was 100% in and he was ready to go.
Yeah.
Which is insanely exciting. Now, I have to ask one thing. A lot of people have speculated, why hasn't The Rock returned up until now? He's got movies, right? He's got his movie career and all that. By the way, I'm noticing that I'm kind of pausing like Jim Cornette a little bit. I think I picked up his rhythm about how he talks as I'm now doing this show.
You're being way too nice.
Be
Jim Cornette.
Could be.
Yeah,
Throw a couple F words in there. Be good.
Maybe. I mean, we'll get into this, of course, later, but it's just something I'm noticing with the pause.
Right.
But he basically, so here's the thing. A lot of people asked about injury, right? So The Rock, he is no longer just a human being. He is a corporation. He is walking, talking $1 million bills, right?
Yeah.
If he gets injured, then, I mean, this affects thousands of people that work under him. You know what I mean? Thousands of people. He mentioned in this interview that he got injured when he had to film Hercules. And he did the film Hercules with like a torn chest muscle or a torn tendon that he had to do. But that could be part of the reason is injury.
Yeah. I mean, he did say, it did come out earlier this year. There's a lot of talk, rumors of him showing up and winning Royal Rumble and going to WrestleMania. So this story in some way leaked a bit to somebody, but it never, a lot of people were sitting at Royal Rumble kind of waiting, is The Rock going to come out? Because he would have to win the Royal Rumble to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. And then Cody Rhodes returned, which we also expected. And then Cody Rhodes lost the belt. And now, I don't know, is he going to be in the Royal Rumble this year?
Okay.
Which, by the way, has been announced for Tampa.
All right. I'm going to tell y'all why it's not going to happen. As we know, he's only here because Hollywood's on strike. He's a busy man.
It's probably true, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Didn't think of that. Yeah, okay.
And also, let's say they do WrestleMania. Who wins that match? Because you're not beating The Rock. And you can't have The Rock be the champion.
It would be super dumb to put The Rock against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Like, it'd be so short-sighted.
I mean, it would almost be as dumb as The Rock being John Cena twice, when The Rock's not even in the business anymore. So I don't see it happening.
Well, I'll tell you, what would have made this a lot easier? If they would have put the belt on Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 39, you could have had Roman Reigns versus The Rock in a non-title match as part of the Bloodline storyline. It could have been the culmination of the entire Bloodline storyline, and the belt is not part of it, and Cody Rhodes could defend it against somebody else.
There it is.
I kind of feel like that's my fault.
Yeah, you really set it up there, Tex. We're 19 minutes, 45 seconds in this time.
If you're gonna put truth on the table, I'm gonna observe it.
Exactly. This would be a character witness. Right, exactly. Well, I mean, but they could do like an exhibition match or something like that. But I'm curious, why do you guys think that The Rock hasn't? Why do you think he went away? Was it just Hollywood?
Is
He
Hollywood.
did just Hollywood.
Yeah, I think the guy. I mean, wrestling is a tough business, and like he was probably in a position 20 years ago where he was making more money than anyone other than maybe Steve Austin had ever seen in wrestling, period. However, it was probably a tenth of what he was making doing movies.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's the same today. I think wrestlers make more today and movie stars probably make less. But then again, a guy like The Rock is in a position where he's probably producing his own movies and getting a cut of the box office. So he's an exception to that.
If he's not the biggest movie star in the world right now, he's in the top 5.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like his movies.
I guess like we could get into a discussion like what is a movie star in 2023? Like my wife's cousin doesn't know who Matt Damon is. So it's like, you know,
oof.
Like,
well, I don't know who your cousin is. So
touche.
Touche. Good point. But no, but that's an interesting point as far as, you know, what we consider a movie star, you know, the younger generation, like who's Matt Damon?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've never seen Good Will Hunting. What is that?
And by the way, like she knows who Asmongold is and she's never played World of Warcraft in her life. Like
right.
The celebrities of today are not the same is the point I'm trying to make. So
right. It's very true. It's very true. Although I think that kid in Dune, I think he's really popular, right? That young guy, he's really huge.
Yeah, Timmy Chalamet.
Yeah, Timmy Chalamet. Yeah, he's pretty over.
Tim Chalamet.
Oh yeah, he's got that thing in his nose. Woo, crazy.
Heartthrob.
People go nuts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We're getting old, man. Our old heroes. It's done.
It's done.
It's done. And they don't even know who The Rock is or Matt Damon. We're in trouble.
Yeah. Oh boy, what are you gonna do? All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what he's. You know, John Cena did announce that he's gonna be around for 8 weeks or something like that. Yes, he showed up as soon as the strike happened. Well, no, it's been around for a little while. So I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the last we've seen of The Rock. I really hope and pray that they're not building towards The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40. That is so short-sighted. Don't get me wrong. I do want to see The Rock versus Roman Reigns. That would be a cool match. Yeah. I just don't want to see it for the world title on the grandest stage of them all, because you either give the title to Roman Reigns again, which nobody wants. I mean, there's probably like one guy, or you put it on The Rock, which just is not. You don't put it on The Rock. The guy's like, you know, because then what is he going to defend it? Do we got another part timer with the belt? Like, what's going to happen?
So there is one scenario. I'm not saying it's a good scenario, but there is a scenario. Roman headlines both nights. There you go. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good scenario.
Right. It's probably the best option I've heard so far in a world where The Rock is wrestling
from me.
Reigns. But the better choice is just to not do that. Or have The Rock challenge him for the title and lose at Royal Rumble, or Crown Jewel is coming up. I'm sure they'll pay a lot of money for The Rock at Crown Jewel. Just for Colt's knowledge, that's the annual Saudi Arabia show where the King of Saudi Arabia pays insane money to these wrestlers.
Yes, there was a bit of controversy about that last year, I believe, right?
Yeah, apparently Saudi Arabia is not nice to women.
What? What?
Yeah.
Right.
No, I don't know. I don't know about the specific controversy you're speaking of, but it's definitely controversial in general that WWE does this twice a year. They go to Saudi Arabia for a big show.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, Colt, if I gave you billions of dollars, you better come to my house every once in a while. Hang out.
Yeah. I'll sing you happy birthday. I will wrestle you right on that Halloween
on your lap.
placemat on your table behind you. Right. We'll
Next
celebrate Halloween together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right.
But Chad was saying it too, that it's going to be Roman versus Cody at WrestleMania. It's got to be Cody, right?
It's got to be. But you never know these days. This is why it was so important to strike when the iron was hot, because you don't know what it's going to look like a year later.
Exactly.
All right, the next story is really interesting, and it's actually kind of an AEW story too. Jade Cargill has reportedly signed with WWE and is expected to be showing up at their performance center this week. This is a shocking story to me because Jade Cargill just returned to AEW last week. She showed up. I think I told you guys about it on our last show.
Yep.
She showed up. She essentially challenged Chris Statlander for her belt back. They then wrestled this last Friday night on Rampage, which I didn't see this week. But apparently Chris Statlander won clean, and they hugged and embraced at the end. And that is apparently the end of Jade Cargill's AEW tenure. She's now, I have mixed feelings about this because I've said many times on the show, I love Jade Cargill. I think she is the next tippity top name on the women's roster of all of wrestling. I do think that she's a little green and she's got a ways to go. Now, I'm kind of talking out of my ass there because what the hell do I know? But it does seem like I don't mean that as a slight. She's really new to this. So she's done a lot with the time she's been here. So, and I love AEW. I love her in AEW. I wanted to see her go far there. And maybe she will again someday, assuming this is true. But I also think she's going to be a dynamite fit in WWE. So I think this is actually really good for her.
Yeah. Are you thinking, Tex? What do you think about her coming to the WWE? You being the shill and all.
You know, I am a fan of men and women slapping big men and women meat. That did not come out right.
Right. That's no, but we get the idea. Yes. Yeah.
So
for Coltrane, it's bats.
Oh,
it's bats. I love me some bat meat.
Slapping bat meat.
Slapping the bat. Right. Slapping the bat. Exactly.
All right. Show
when
title.
when I first saw her, I was like, oh, she's everything Vince would want. And so it makes sense for her to go to WWE. And I think she's can have some great matches. And I'm not gonna lie, WWE's women, the top of it's been really good lately.
Yeah.
There's been some really good matches. I think she can fit in good. And a lot of the women at the top of the WWE are very professional. They can really train her and help her a lot. So I think it could be a good move. It's kind of weird how they built her up so hard in AEW and she's just gone now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, I'll bet Tony Khan feels a little slighted that she's doing this, but I guess it's also business, right? That's the risk you take when you take a new talent on a short contract and you push him to the moon. So it makes you think about our story last week about how LA Knight is being held back because he hasn't signed a long-term deal yet.
Now,
right.
The question is she going to go in NXT for a while, build her name there?
This is the debate that I've heard a lot of people talking about. I think she should absolutely go to NXT for a while. I know that other people strongly disagree with that, but I think like she's young. She's got all the potential in the world. Let's take our time with building this star. Like she doesn't need to be in there right away wrestling Charlotte Flair or whatever. Like let's make her as awesome as we can. Plus she's also like, needs to take some time probably with where she's at in her career to learn the WWE approach. That's a very big thing with WWE that they only with the biggest names do they let bypass that. So
yeah. And she's got the look, she's got the physique. Yeah. She's got everything she needs. She just got to get stronger in the ring, in my opinion. I think that her wrestling side is a little bit weaker. And I think going through NXT would be a huge benefit for her.
Yeah. I've watched her from the start, and she's definitely improved since she started. So she's not like she in no way feels to me like, oh, that's lacking. It feels to me like, oh, it's developing, and she should develop it a little more before they put her on the main roster.
How is she on the mic, by the way? I haven't seen her on the mic yet.
She's good.
Yeah,
I think she's good. Yeah. She plays like her kind of catchphrase in AEW was "I'm that bitch." Like that was kind of what she said. Like I'm that bitch, and I mean it'll be interesting to see. Like for all we know, WWE might repackage her completely. They might even change her name. It seems unlikely for her caliber, but they could do it.
I mean, I don't know. I bet they changed her name. I don't think her name brings any value.
Well,
And not just not enough value. They
yeah,
would
I don't know.
rather copyright it.
It'd be interesting to
The
see.
Cargill Jade or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But then
Hmm.
again, maybe she made a deal that she gets to keep her name. Maybe she had enough clout going in that she and enough
Yeah.
foresight to make that. Anyways, interesting to see. First of all, we don't know if this is true, but virtually every outlet is reporting it to be true. So it's not confirmed, but there's nobody naysaying this, so it's probably true. All right, let's skip ahead. Just one last piece of news before we jump into our main topic, and that's AEW news. It came out this week, and the internet burned down when it came out this week. That a Freedom of Information request was given to the City of London, who reported that the actual turnstile attendance for AEW All In London was not 81,035 people. It was 72,265 people. So
Disgusting that they would lie about something like that. You know, WWE would never do this.
right.
He's right. WWE would never do something like this. Outrageous.
Now, Tony Khan was very careful whenever he claimed the attendance that it was an all-time high, quote-unquote, paid attendance of 81,035, which means that he is saying that 81,035 tickets were sold to All In. However, it's apparently the turnstile only counted 72,000 and some. Now, if we take all of this to be true, then it could mean a few things. It could mean that like people bought tickets and then didn't show up, which is entirely possible that months ago somebody bought a cheap ticket and then didn't show up. It could also mean, if you're the more dubious option, is that Tony Khan or his company bought a bunch of tickets to inflate the number with no intention of using the seats, which is what some people think happened. Or it's possible that not everybody went in through the turnstile, that all sorts of people went in through another gate that was not zapping every individual ticket. You think of all those box seats, for example, VIP entrances. That the truth is, it's probably a mix of everything. But everything. I personally, and I know I'm a shill for AEW, but I just, on the face of it, I don't buy that Tony Khan's the type of guy that would inflate his number by buying tickets. He just seems like honest to a fault. And even his biggest critics would say that about him. So I don't buy that. Now, if evidence came out to the contrary, fine. But without that evidence, I dismiss that as a reason.
I don't know. I mean, if I was like 1,000 tickets away from the record, I might throw a couple of dollars at it.
Right, but in this scenario, he's like 9,000 tickets away from the.
That's the same as me buying one ticket. I mean, he has a lot of money.
Can I ask a question here? I'm a little fired up about this here, boys. A little fired up.
Oh,
yeah. But I'm fired up about WWE fans. Yes, I'm talking to you. Now, here's my question. So I just came back to wrestling, like we said, after 30 or so years, right? We've been doing this podcast about 2 months, coming up on 3. And there's one thing I've always heard from WWE fans consistently, and that is ticket sales and ratings and numbers. The WWE is doing everything they can to downplay AEW any chance they get. Any chance. And Tex, you're even guilty of it too. We're talking about some great AEW event. One of the first you say is, well, yeah, but you check the ratings? You check the ratings? All In at Wembley? Oh, yeah, well, did you see the actual turnstile? It's only 71,000. Only 71,000.
I don't even know what a turnstile is.
What is this obsession? And I get it. I think what it is that WWE is intimidated. Hear me out. Intimidated. They'll never admit this, but they're a little scared of AEW because AEW is actually doing really well. So they're looking for everything they can to knock him down, to say AEW is lower tier. AEW is second tier, lower tier.
mm-hmm.
And I hear this argument all the time. Ratings, numbers, blah, blah, blah. It's still in the conversation. AEW They're still holding huge pay-per-view, 71,000, massive at Wembley. But I always hear this. I always hear the ratings and I hear the ticket sales. And I guarantee you this Freedom of Information thing that was filed was done by Vince McMahon. No, but it was done by
right.
somebody, I'm guessing, in the WWE. It's just an argument I've always heard.
It's pretty cringe, in my opinion. Yeah. And it's like one of those things where AEW is a fraction the size of WWE.
Absolutely.
So the fact that they're like in the same conversation.
Yes.
You know, like this, if this is true, if we take the 72,000 number, it bumps this down to the second biggest event of all time behind one of the WrestleManias.
Right.
It's still amazing.
Yeah. Huge. But
Look.
Tex, what's the deal, man? That's all I've heard for the past coming up on 3 months now.
I'm sorry that I am upsetting you shills, you AEW shills, and y'all don't want to hear the truth. I am just speaking the truth. I have not lied one time on this show.
That's
Right.
Maybe once.
Maybe once, right?
Maybe once. But I am just telling everybody what they need to hear, and that is AEW is not 81,000 seats worth filling. So I'm sorry, Tony Khan lied, and WWE is better.
I don't know. Like Manny's saying in
Don't listen to
chat,
Manny.
they have to go by the numbers and the ratings because they can't judge by quality or excellence.
Yeah, it's one of those things where AEW's, we've talked about this before, they're in this tricky spot right now with their attendance. They're not getting attendance. They're not getting the attendance that WWE is getting on a week-to-week basis. There's no denying that. They're doing fine, but WWE happens to be at a position right now where they're often selling out televised shows.
Yes.
So WWE fans are acting like it's always been like that, and then that is the standard of success. Meanwhile, you go back a couple years, WWE couldn't fart out a sellout. Like you couldn't do it. And all of a sudden, WWE's on fire. Good for WWE, by the way.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, the fans are seeing AEW do better numbers than WWE was doing a short time ago, and they're turning their nose at it. It's really unfortunate. It's this tribalism. It's
Yes, that is true.
I mean, tribalism is everywhere in our life right now. It's in our politics. It's in our socialization. Everything is tribal these days.
Right.
And it's never good. The irony is it's never good for us. It's always good for the people that, like, when you're tribal, and I'm guilty of this to some extent for AEW, but I try to keep that tempered to some extent. But like every time that you're tribal, you are asking for less, because these companies are awesome when they are earning your favor. But when you just give it willingly, they don't have to earn it anymore, and their product is not as good. It's like a baseline of like the rules of competition, right? Like we as customers, as wrestling customers, should be doing everything we can not to be tribal, so that these companies have to work their asses off to give us the best product they possibly can.
That's true.
Now, they should hate each other because that's how competition works. I mean, I'd love it if they worked together, but they should see each other as competition, and they should be trying to undermine each other. I totally get. I don't agree with it I don't agree with it, but I can see why.
Yes,
they're going to down talk each other. That's their job. But the second we start doing that down talking for them, they stop trying. That's the problem.
that's true. And having that competition, like you said, sells more merch. It becomes like a cult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're obsessed with it. You become a big fan.
Yeah.
But I also look for WWE fans out there. I really do enjoy WWE. I've really enjoyed the stories. It's been fantastic. Like it's been some great wrestling. There's been some okay wrestling, but also on the AEW as well.
Yeah. Ups and downs for sure.
Ups and downs.
Ups and downs.
Just something that I've just noticed that whenever AEW seems to do well or sell a show, you always hear, well, what about the ratings? What about the attendance? So it's just something I've just picked up on in the last 3 months or so.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's totally unfortunate. It'll be interesting to see how long that lasts. I mean, AEW, if this will continue to be the attendance, I don't know, whatever. But I think it's time that we move on because speaking of cult,
Exactly.
it is time we talked about our topic of the week. This week we are talking about the one and only Jim Cornette. Now, I'm sure virtually everybody who listens to a podcast like this knows exactly who Jim Cornette is because his two podcasts are the top two wrestling podcasts in the world. So whether you like him or not, you certainly got to know who he is. His fans are called the Cult of Cornette. But today we're going to talk about him. We assigned ourselves an entire 4-hour and 12-minute episode. And if you are listening to this at home and want to hear this episode before we talk about it, it is episode 498 of the Jim Cornette Experience. And feel free to pause and come back next week when you finish hearing that episode.
Come back in 3 months. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, if I really put effort into it, I would rip my shirt off right now, and it would be a Jim Cornette shirt. But I don't have one. But I just want y'all to know I wanted to do that.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did ChatGPT suggest that?
No, actually, my son did.
So I'm guessing. So Tex is a big Jim Cornette fan
I love him
for many years.
Many years.
When did you first start listening to Jim Cornette? Let's hear about a young Texas crazy horse.
So
A young lad.
I was actually not watching wrestling at the time, and for some reason, I knew who Jim Cornette was, right, from the old days. I saw his podcast. I clicked on it, and he is very outrageous, and I just found myself cracking up the whole time. And next thing you know, I'm listening to 4-hour episodes twice a week, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Right.
So, yeah.
How about you there, Boots?
Well, I know who Jim Cornette is from his manager days. I really didn't know much about him beyond the fact that he was a manager until more recently when I kind of discovered his podcast. I actually first discovered his podcast on YouTube because they chop up pieces of it and they post it on YouTube. And that started showing up in my algorithm. So I started watching them. Listening, really. They just put up a still kind of drawn image. But my initial take was this guy's pretty funny. Like I think he's a pretty funny guy. And then as I listened to him more, I kind of was like, okay, I this guy's like super old school. He's I'm hesitant to use the word misogynistic because I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot these days, but there's definitely a sexist element to his views on women's wrestling. He has a very severe bias against many wrestlers that I think are wonderful. And that is like really kind of like allows me to kind of just not really care that much about what he says about anything. And I try to, I do think he gives fair critiques. In fact, in this episode that we listened to, I thought he had a lot of fair critiques about several matches that he was talking about. But it is just a piece of what he does, and there's other problematic pieces to that pie, in my opinion.
Now, do you guys think is he a WWE guy or an AEW guy? Does he have a preference in your mind?
He is definitely not an AEW guy. He hates AEW.
So, if he had to save one of them, like if they're in a fire and he has to save one, he's probably going to say WWE. But I wouldn't say he's a WWE guy either. He kind of hates everything. He's like that old grandpa that just complains and screams about everything.
Right.
That's Jim Cornette.
Because I did notice there was some anger towards AEW, of course, but quite a bit about WWE, at least in this episode.
Yeah, I think that he is often in his critiques match to match, I think he is fair and I might go so far to say balanced in his critiques of WWE. He is not a WWE fanboy by any stretch. However, I do think that whether it's because of maybe he has some like deep-seated long-standing feeling of loyalty to WWE because he's worked with them, or maybe he sees them as the establishment because Vince McMahon is old school like him, and all of the old school organizations that he's been involved with, many of them have funneled into WWE over the years. I don't know, but I definitely think that he is kinder to WWE and more balanced in his approach. That's not to say that he doesn't call out WWE when he feels it necessary, but I think that he's balanced. And I also think what I've noticed in the listening that I've done of him is that his bias will make him, there's a double standard, I would say. He is very quick to point out certain things with AEW that he doesn't point out with WWE. One example from when I first was listening to a lot of him, maybe a year or two ago, was he was highly critical, and Brian Last, his co-host, is in many ways worse than him when it comes to critiquing AEW, but highly critical of the spots that he was seeing on AEW. Those are dangerous. Like they're gonna break their neck, right? Like the talking about how Darby Allin is gonna be dead by the time he's 30, and this sort of thing. And then, I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm not saying it's not out there because I don't listen to everything Jim Cornette says, but Big E, a wrestler in WWE, actually did break his neck during a match, and I didn't hear a peep from Jim Cornette or Brian Last about it. So if they talked about it, they talked about it briefly, and they moved on. Whereas it is a centerpiece, or at least was at that time, of their discussion of AEW about how dangerous they are and irresponsible they are. So, like, that's an example of what I would call probably a subconscious bias. I think they probably don't even realize that they're so sensitive to that sort of thing on one side and ignore it on the other.
Interesting.
Now, Coltrane, you have asked us our opinions. I'm going to get into a little bit of a bio about Jim Cornette, but before I do,
yes.
I want to know what you thought about the Jim Cornette experience. How was your experience?
How was your experience with the Jim Cornette Experience? Well, it's an interesting thing. And as we've been discussing Jim Cornette, I've been watching the chat room. And I have never seen, in the 3 months we've been doing this show, the chat going back and forth on some people loving him and other people hating him. Some people saying, I that's 4 hours of my life I'm never going to get back. Other people saying how great he is. So it's an amazing thing to me that this individual can be so polarizing, both positive and negative. But here's the thing. This is what I find great. This is what I love about this. I'm listening to him for the very first time. This was my first episode ever of listening to Jim Cornette, which means I have no preconceived notion or perception going into this. Right? So you had an experience, Shoe Boots, years ago. You mentioned about Big E broke his neck. They didn't say a word, right? So they got some obvious bias. I will say, Brian, his co-host, I was feeling a lot of bias towards AEW. I was definitely feeling that. Tex, right? There's moments, and it goes for everyone in chat. Everyone had a moment where they made up their mind about an individual, right? They had their perception. So for me going in, listening for the first time, first off, WWE, AEW, sounded to me like he preferred AEW over WWE. Now, that sounds crazy, right? For a lot of you listening right now, because you have a preconceived notion that he's WWE biased. But if you listen to his words and what he was saying, when he talked about AEW, he was using words like great, superstar, fantastic. WWE, this is awful. This is terrible. He was complaining an awful lot. I like the comparison to him being an old grandpa. Well, I'm not an old grandpa, but I will say, and people are going to freak out, I loved Jim Cornette. I thought he was fantastic. Now, right now, everyone's going, oh my God, Colt, you've lost me. You've lost me, Colt. That's it. I'm no longer going to listen to you or talk to you ever again because you said you like Jim Cornette. Yes. Why? Because this was my first time listening. First time ever. Couple of things I really appreciated about him. Like I said earlier, he's got that dramatic pause. The way he talks when he introduces a topic about WWE is he accentuates certain words, which makes the audience listen. It's a very excellent, it's a very old school broadcaster type thing. I swear he's still using the same mic he used 30 years ago. When you listen to it, right? It's got that old school sound to it. You know,
little
what I mean?
Bob Barker one, maybe.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's probably got that. But I thought he was fun. I thought he was interesting. I thought he was funny. I thought his critiques, I thought they were excellent. And he went through each and every match. The reason it's 4 hours long is because he's going through every single match with those dramatic pauses.
Yeah.
Which keeps the audience going. It reminds me of this host called Tom Likas. Now, hold on.
Oh, I remember him.
Remember Tom Likas, right?
Yep.
He did the same thing where you would pause and it was like this broadcaster trick keeps the audience going. The idea being if you just keep rambling, the audience tunes out. But the second you pause, they suddenly snap back in and they pay attention. So I really liked hearing his voice. It was very old school to me. I found it very kind of relaxing. It reminded me of listening to an old 1950s radio program, you know, from like the olden days. It was like an old audio drama or something. So I found myself laying in bed, listening to the Jim Cornette show. That probably sounds crazy. That sounds how it's not supposed to sound, but I found it very relaxing. I found it very chill and all that. So anyway, my opinion of him was, and again, I like big personalities. I just do. I love big personalities, somebody with something to say, whether good or bad. I may not agree, but I like that you're stating it. You're getting it out there. I think it's fantastic. So I would say I could become a member of the cult of Cornette. Colt becomes a member of the cult because I thought he was an excellent broadcaster. And I think, I'm telling you, man, he seemed to be liking AEW
He
a bit
had
more than WWE.
He had some favorable views of, in particular, the All Out show, which was just a banger of a show. The Chicago pay-per-view. And I think like he kind of sounded to me like he was, I think he even said it at one point that he was begrudgingly admitting that like some of these matches, especially the Kenny Omega. So Kenny Omega, like, so let me not get ahead of us. Let's just cover a few facts here. So let's talk a little bit about Jim Cornette. I want to get this on the record as we kind of like talk a little bit more about him, because I think this is even going to be more interesting because Coltrane is now saying that he's willing to let the cult of Cornette come into his house and talk about their religion to him on his couch and see where it goes. Right
now, again, I don't know any backstory. I have no preconceived notion.
You're not joining, but they knocked on the door and asked if they could come in for coffee, and you said sure. That's where you're at.
I'm willing to hear him out.
Yeah.
All right, come on in.
Okay.
I'll be willing to hear him out.
Yeah.
As long as my wife is at home. I don't think she would let them in. I don't think my wife would let them in.
No, I think if she answered the door, they'd ask if your husband is here before they were willing to come in. But,
oh, jeez.
Or
right.
Is the homeowner here? That's what they
probably yes, right. Naturally. Yes. Perfect.
No, I half jest. So a little bit about Jim Cornette. He's worked in wrestling for decades. He is this old school guy from the South. This is why I'm a little bit ignorant of him. He's from this part of the wrestling scene that, because of where I live and where I grew up, I was just not exposed to the South really in any way, because WWF was kind of the North until it took over the South. So unless you kind of lived down there or you grew up watching WCW instead of WWF, which I didn't, then you didn't really see it. So, but I know him as a manager. He had the tennis racket and yeah, so there he is. So we know that he's known for his podcasts. Now he is very famously known for many real life feuds with both wrestlers and wrestling personalities. One of the more famous ones is Vince Russo, who we've talked about, was the kind of story runner during the Attitude Era. And Vince Russo has a restraining order against him because he's threatened. I don't know if he threatened to kill him, but he certainly threatened violence. And he's declared on Dark Side of the Ring that he is waiting for Vince Russo to die, and he promises to piss on Vince Russo's grave when he does.
Yes.
Okay.
And then he laughed, genuinely laughed at the thought of it, like with glee in his eyes when he said it.
Right. Okay. Right.
He is a vocal critic of extreme wrestling, so that includes all of the tables, the tacks, all that. He's a very strong critic of what he calls comedy wrestling, which could be your Orange Cassidys of the world, your Pretty Deadlies. He doesn't like it. And him and Brian Last, they're just into old school shoot style wrestling. They want to see good matches, and the story that they're most interested in is the story that plays out in the match, I think.
FTR. So they love
FTR. They love CM Punk.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there they go. Now,
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
There was one phrase he kept saying that I didn't know what it meant. He said a fake finish. They keep doing a fake finish. What's a fake finish?
Like 1, 2, oh.
Okay.
So like a fake finish is when there's a 2.5 count, basically. And
gotcha.
And the idea of a fake finish is if it's done well, the audience truly says, oh, because they thought it was going to happen.
Right.
But the reality is that 95% of all fake finishes, nobody expects it to be a pin.
Yes.
Right.
So, because he was like, and they're doing their fake finishes over and over.
I would imagine a guy like Jim Cornette would consider that the current state of fake finishes in wrestling to be lazy and or sloppy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right for the most part.
Yeah, I think it's a fair critique. I think it is overused. So now where I really pick up, this guy openly mocks Tony Khan. He is yes. Now there's a few people that I honestly feel like I'm giving Cornette a fair shake when I say he is outright mean to Tony Khan. Now, Brian Last is meaner to Tony Khan, but they talked about him like a spoiled, petulant child, that he's like he was a loner in school. I think there was a line in this episode where they talked when they were doing an advertisement for earbuds about how Tony Khan was a loser in school who gave the answers to tests to people to try and make friends. Like just like totally, like it's one of those things where as someone who was once a comedian in my life, I think that anyone in the public eye is fair game. So it's not like Tony Khan is not a fair target, right? But Jim Cornette is also needs to be fairly judged on the quality of his joke. And he's just taking pot shots at Tony Khan for no reason, in my opinion. Like it's like one of those things like, okay, you can critique his booking, but when you start just like mocking him that way, it's, and he does the same with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and Orange Cassidy on the regs. In fact, he has nicknames for many wrestlers.
Yes,
and,
yes, I heard those.
The Young Bucks are the Buckaroos. Kenny Omega, I feel like you probably picked up on it by the end of the episode, but he does refer to Kenny Omega as Twinkle Toes McFingerbang.
Yes. Right. Yes.
Now, him and Kenny, they do have history. That's why he's so rough on him.
Okay, I don't know their history, but I know
Kenny Omega begged to be on one of his shows, then no-showed it, and gave some bad excuse that was proven wrong, a lie. And so they've been hating each other since then.
Right. And I gotta say, as someone that doesn't know the history of Kenny Omega, I kind of agreed with him a bit about when he talked about Kenny Omega, saying he looks weird, he's got kind of crazy moves, and there's always the screwdriver.
Well, the screwdriver is not. It's part of this year. It's not. There's no screwdriver 2 years ago. But
I'm just saying.
Oh, Iron Grudge in the chat. Yeah, he calls Orange Cassidy. He calls him Pockets.
Pockets.
Right.
That one's funny.
That's a funny name because it's even the Buckaroos is fine because it's not an insulting name. It's just a nickname like George W. Bush might give you. But like Twinkle Toes McFinger Bang is a bit much.
That's pretty intense. That's a little bit more up there. Right?
But it's part of his critique, and his critique against all of those wrestlers. He critiques the comedy wrestling, but he also doesn't care for the high flying. And the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have made big names for themselves, kind of mainstreaming some high flying stuff that wasn't really that big in American wrestling not that long ago. Like there's always been a place for it, but it hasn't been the mainstream. You know what I mean?
And he called Luchasaurus Dino. I think.
Yeah.
But it was interesting when he talked about Dino was fighting against Darby Allin and how he just completely crushed him at the beginning of the match, you know? And again, like you were saying, he doesn't like a lot of that extreme stuff because he's like, you know, Darby's talking about, I can take it, but he's going to be injured.
Yeah.
He's going to be out.
That's a good one to actually mention, that he made this critique that like they did this great spot, but they did it at the beginning of the match and there was nowhere to go after that, was his critique essentially. And it was one of those critiques where I think, and this is one of the things that I think has to be done with a guy like Jim Cornette. If you're going to critique him, you can take that and you can say, okay, well, he said something and at a glance, it makes sense. Sure. That makes sense. Now, if I stop and think about it, like really think about it, did that make sense? Well, it sounded good, but that match was good after that point. So it was fine. The match wasn't bad. It was just not the way he would have done it. And so that's one of those moments where I say, okay, he gave a criticism that I think is fair. He spoke from a place of experience, and he spoke in a critical way about the match. So I would never say he was wrong about it. I would just say that like that is an example of a critique that he would give that a Cult of Cornette fan would take as gospel the moment he said it. But if you actually break down what he said, it's just an opinion, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, he was saying that you have that major injury at the end, and then Darby would then recover and then come back, right? But instead, that happened at the very beginning of the match, so he's already pretty much destroyed now heading into, you know, because it's Darby Allin who weighs 125 pounds against 300-pound Luchasaurus, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, like, and he made the criticism too, like, Darby's really good at selling, but part of the reason of that is that Darby's actually getting hurt.
It's exactly. He's actually getting destroyed.
Yeah. So, and he's often talking about that, about Darby Allin. That's his kind of go-to shtick with Darby Allin, that this guy's going to get hurt. And it's kind of what I was saying earlier about how he's kind of one-sided in my opinion on that. Now, a couple quick things here. He does have a criminal record for a number of assaults, mostly involving fights with fans. So he is not afraid, and this is his old school nature, right? Like, he's just not afraid to fight. That's just how he does it.
Sure.
And surprisingly to me, I had to put this in here. It doesn't come up in his podcast as far as I've heard. I've never heard him talk really politics before. Maybe he talks about it in other outlets. But I was very surprised to learn that he leans far left and is an outspoken Democratic socialist, a la Bernie Sanders. That shocked me because he just struck me as a Trumper. I don't know. You know?
It's the exact opposite. His hate for Trump is worse than Kenny Omega.
Right.
It's just
or pockets. Right.
Yeah.
Anyways, reading his bio, this was actually my favorite fact about him because it was one of those things that makes you go, oh, my assumptions were not accurate, right? That like I made assumptions based on what I knew, but there's more depth to this guy than you think, right? So interesting.
Yeah, that's awesome. He brought up an interesting point that I hadn't thought of, and I could tell right away that they were big CM Punk fans, right? Big CM Punk fans, not big fans of Tony Khan and the decision to get rid of CM Punk, right? And the various stories about what happened in the ring or what happened backstage and all this other kind of stuff. But an interesting point was brought up, and that was this, that CM Punk was in the WWE for 10 years with no incidents. He's been in AEW for 2, and it's been complete chaos. Why do you think that is?
Well, I got to be honest, I disagree with the statement.
Okay.
There was incidents. In fact, CM
Was
Punk
there?
left in an incident. WWE.
In WWE.
This is the bias I'm talking about. There's a very famous promo
Mm.
CM Punk cut in WWE known as the Pipe Bomb promo, where he basically went rogue on live television.
Well, a lot of people think that's a work, that it wasn't a pipe bomb. It could have been a work.
He demanded to get out of his contract right before WrestleMania because he was angry because of the choices that were being made for who was going to win the title. He sued WWE, and I believe they settled out of court, if I remember correctly, for being for maltreatment and like he was a problem. He's like, a lot of people have said like CM Punk is like the one guy that Vince McMahon would never hire again. Like, it's just, that is to me like the bias. Did he get in fights backstage? No, not to my knowledge. But maybe he did, because just like Jim Cornette says, when people fight backstage in WWE, it doesn't get leaked.
Yeah.
They're on tight leashes in WWE.
Or he's now trained. He does some MMA. He wants to throw those hands. It's the UFC's fault.
Can I just ask real quick? You're saying pipe bomb? Are you saying that CM Punk made a pipe bomb?
No, it just got kind of known as like the promo became called the Pipe Bomb. Because he basically,
all right. He didn't show up on the ring holding a pipe bomb.
It's a figurative pipe bomb into the storyline of the.
That's pretty intense. All right. Okay. Well, so the you know what just happened? I've clearly started to join the cult because I took what he said as gospel.
Well, but why wouldn't you? You don't know.
Because I don't know. Right. I don't know. I don't know what's happened. I don't know about CM Punk until I saw him now.
So this is a thing that and I'm not saying that. I have to preface this. I'm not saying this as to vilify Jim Cornette, because I feel like I don't know. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm taking a relatively balanced approach at Jim Cornette here. I'm not hating on the guy, but I am criticizing him where I think he's wrong. I consider him a guilty pleasure. I enjoy listening to his takes. He's funny. I got to be honest, his commercials are hilarious.
The best part.
Like, nobody else would have the gall to just go so off script on the copy provided on these things. And just he must piss off so many advertisers when he just talks about. Anyway.
It's a crazy transition how he transitions into the commercials and then back out.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. But I was thinking about it. I felt listening to him, it was like watching live wrestling, where it's just in the middle of the match and then it just goes to commercial. But I get it. Like, the man's got to get paid. At least he incorporates it in to what he's talking about at the time.
So Cornette, he has this talent, and it is a talent that he and a lot of pundits, especially in politics, have this, but you'll see it everywhere. People who are good speakers have an ability to essentially make a statement that is not really true or murky at best, but they'll say it quickly and confidently and move on to the point that they're building on that foundation. And it has a very interesting effect on most people. Most reasonable people will just kind of you move on so quick that somebody doesn't really stop to think about what was said critically, and you accept it. And then the rest of the point that he makes actually sounds like a really good point, because actually everything he says after that statement is actually a really well thought out argument. And that's what you're focused on as a critical thinker. That was a good argument. But they snuck that foundation that isn't quite true in the bottom. And you see this is basically anytime a guy like Ben Shapiro talks, this is his skill. This is what he does.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can hate Ben Shapiro, you can love him. I detest the guy. Yeah. But it's not really the point. But it's not really the point to say whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. The point is, whether you like him or hate him, he is an excellent public speaker, and that is his talent right there.
He just speaks very quickly and with confidence, and therefore you think he's right.
Yeah,
and then he just moves on.
Wow, you've been listening to some Ben Shapiro?
Oh,
it's like a hate watch. You know what I mean? Like, when you're in a bad mood, you just watch something that just makes you angrier.
He is the guy that I actually can't, when he crosses my feed or something like that,
Yeah.
I can't not watch it. Because I'm just incredulous at what he says. And then, like you were talking about earlier with your bat mating, then all of a sudden I get all these Ben Shapiro.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Same thing. In fact, Ben Shapiro and bats mating are pretty much one and the same. They're actually very similar
Same
in
video.
quality of content, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not trying to get political here, but he's very similar to bats mating. It's just basically that's what's coming out of his mouth. But I'm not trying to get political here. We're good. We're good.
I think some of the problem is people take Jim Cornette too serious. I think he's not supposed to be listened and take everything word for word. You're supposed to just have fun with it. Like I said, he's the old crazy grandpa that just hates everything. He hates everything. Yeah. And it's okay.
I think the problem with that view, because I think you're right to some extent, but the problem with that view is if he's not going to express that and he's going to sit back knowingly while people do take him way too seriously and harass the hell out of his detractors publicly and just sort of laugh it off, he doesn't really get to sit on that hill. You know what I mean? Like, if you're saying, I'm going to make this thing for fun and I'm going to be mean and I'm going to be rude, and then some people improperly take it too seriously and start like really going too far with other people. Like, there is a chance, it's unlikely, we're a small podcast, but there is a chance that we might get harassed for this episode. It could happen.
Right.
Not because Cornette wants it to happen. He couldn't give a shit about us, but his fans are rabid, right? They'll do it. And,
so you think that that's his responsibility? That's his. It's on it because he can't control how people behave.
No. It's a tricky thing, but if he is going to hide behind the plausible deniability of this is not meant to be serious, but then do nothing and almost dog whistle it to continue when it does happen, then he doesn't, in my opinion, he doesn't get to hide behind that shroud. Like, yes, if you like, it's like, as Jim, and I don't know, has Jim Cornette ever been confronted with like somebody says, well, what do you think about these fans of yours that like dox people and like expose their home addresses on the internet for people that speak ill about you? Does he then say, well, that's crazy. Obviously, of course I don't condone that. That's ridiculous. I'm just having a bit of fun. Does he say that? If he says that, I'm A-okay with him. If he says, it's not my responsibility, I got nothing, like if he's just like dodges that and is unwilling to like take that, then he's doing the thing where he's like, I am actually not going to say what needs to be said here because I would rather dog whistle my fans because it's making me money.
Here's the problem. There is no way in hell he know what DDoS is.
Well, yeah, that might be true.
He is. That's a Brian Last thing. He might know. Another thing, Jim does come from an era where it was big old strong men and they slapped and did holds. So I can understand why he doesn't like this new wrestling, because it's completely different than what he was ingrained into and what he would learn, and he comes from a time where it was real. Everyone had to believe it was real, and now everyone knows it's not. And so the one rule in the business was don't let people know it's fake. And now everyone knows. So I can see why he hates on AEW for that and WWE. Yeah. And he admits that Bret Hart's the one that ruined wrestling. Well, Bret Hart is one of the people that ruined kayfabe.
He's a core piece of the destruction of kayfabe as we knew it. Yeah. Which is funny because he probably never wanted to be.
Right.
But he got so mad over that Montreal Screwjob thing that,
I still don't know what that is.
We'll get to that.
We'll
This
get
mod
there.
is this another Kenny Omega screwdriver thing? Is that
No,
what this is?
it's got a lot of bats involved.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Hey, no Ben Shapiro though, so you're
No
good.
Ben Shapiro. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a step in the right direction.
You do raise a good point, and I think this is important. Like, okay, I've said my piece about how I can be critical about Jim Cornette. The other piece that I wanted, like, I definitely wanted, because I know we're gonna start winding down in a bit here, but like, I did want to cover a couple quick things here. One is that the whole opening part. It is true. People don't ask us how we want our burgers up here in Canada.
Oh yeah,
Pink
thank you.
burger story.
Is that true? Yeah, right.
I've only think maybe once or twice in my life in Canada had somebody ask me how I want my burger done, and it was at a really kind of high end burger place, and
I'm shocked.
and I was raised to understand the same thing that writer said, is that you want to cook a burger completely through, because any meat that is exposed to the air gets bacteria, and it's not a problem for a steak because you're cooking all the surface that was exposed to the air. But for ground beef, unless you are grinding it immediately before cooking it, you are supposed to cook it completely through. And
That's what's-
it's a hockey
Ugh.
puck.
now, that being said, I've lived in America a couple times in my life, and I prefer a pink burger. And I
Thank
will
you.
make myself a pink burger often at home. And I always get nervous because I kind of like if I'm barbecuing, I tend to make them a little pinker than anybody else around here wants. And sometimes
That's crazy.
I've noticed my mother-in-law being like looking at it like,
Right. And how many times can a Canadian say sorry?
Yes.
You know, in regards to a pink burger. You know,
Yeah.
that's just insane. I was actually shocked at that because that's a very regular thing. For those wondering, in the episode, he had somebody write in about a Canadian. Essentially, he was asked, how do you want your burger cooked? And, you know, it just seemed such an off, like, what kind of a question is that? Like, you know, so I was actually shocked to hear that. And also knowing that your burger is medium to medium well, that's just insane.
Ugh.
yeah,
You got to have the pink. You got to have like medium rare.
I
you know?
like some pink in the burger, but a good burger by Canadian standards is usually like, as the second that the pink disappears, you take it off the grill. That's the perfect burger.
Oh,
I like a
Ugh.
pink burger. You're not. Yeah.
And now I have a question. Do I have a bucket head?
What?
you don't want to. Is that part of this character witness?
No, because he
That's-
said people who do podcasts with video all have bucket heads.
Buckethead.
That's true. That's very true.
You know what? When he said that, I know exactly who he's talking about, and it's Sean Ross Sapp. Sean Ross Sapp runs Fightful.com, and he's awesome, and I love Sean Ross Sapp. And if Sean Ross Sapp wanted to hire us, I'd be like, yep. But he does sit really effing close to his camera when he does his videos. But
Right.
it's like,
No, but I found him completely entertaining. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I really liked how he spoke. It reminded me of that kind of old school broadcaster thing. So being somebody that, you know, is into that kind of thing, I kind of geeked out about that. So I really was drawn to that old school kind of feel.
I like him too. He's fun.
Hey, can I tell you one thing I really like about Cornette? I like sometimes on their show, they'll like bring up an old program, a wrestling program, and he can name almost every match on that card.
Yeah.
It just shows how much of a historian and how much of the business he knows.
He's got an
I like the
encyclopedic
old.
knowledge of wrestling.
He's definitely been around. He's definitely been around for sure.
Funny enough, the only other guy I can think of that has that level of knowledge about wrestling is his arch nemesis, Dave Meltzer,
Yeah.
who we might do an episode on Dave Meltzer sometime. I don't know. But yeah, no, it is impressive.
Mhm.
And I think that, like, at the end of the day, as we kind of wind this down, I guess we got to kind of say, is Jim Cornette good or bad for wrestling in general? Do you guys want to weigh in?
Yeah, I have an opinion. I think he's good. Anything that gets people talking about wrestling, even if it's hating on AEW, as long as people are talking about wrestling, it's a good thing.
I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I think that the point that I wanted to make today is that I think there are some pieces to this guy that are problematic in 2023, but I also get that he's an older dude and that he ain't going to change. And um, it's kind of, if you can accept that, then I think you can really enjoy what he's got to offer. The problem is, I guess the problem I want to point out is that, like, if you become a tribalist and subscribe to everything he says, the same idiots that will take his thing and then go and dox people are the same idiots will take his comment about blood and then go be incredibly misogynistic on the internet. That's
Here's
the problem.
The problem, you're right, but you also have people on the other side who will do everything Dave Meltzer says.
Yes.
And praise all the horrible matches that AEW put on.
If I'm going to be critical of myself, when I first started learning about the sort of wrestling fandom tribalism, I was definitely on Team Meltzer. Loved Brian Alvarez, loved Dave Meltzer. I know you don't know who these guys are, Coltrane.
No idea who these people
are. They're kind of like
another
another camp of people that are really big supporters of AEW and claim to be neutral. But if I am being honest, I think they do have a bias against WWE and in favor of AEW. And that's why I was initially kind of attracted to what they had to say. And I actually still think Brian Alvarez is relatively fair. But I do think Dave Meltzer, maybe in his old age at least, is I don't know, it's kind of sketchy, some of the things he's got to say. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Anyways, I think that knowing about Jim Cornette is kind of core to knowing about wrestling in 2023. So I'm glad we did this. And I wouldn't mind doing a dive into his other podcast at some point, which is more kind of free form where he kind of just expresses his opinions on stuff. We might get.
Does he always do it with the co-host Brian? Is he on
both of his podcasts with Brian Last, who also runs a wrestling news site? Is it Wrestling News?
You're supposed to scream it.
I can't remember what it is.
I don't remember either.
I will say, like, Brian Last, he was actually pretty tame this episode, in my opinion. I was kind of like waiting for him to have a moment that I was going to like point to you, Coltrane, and be like, you see, this guy sucks. But he was actually pretty tame this episode. But I will say Brian Last has said far more vile and divisive things than Jim Cornette.
Well, Brian, I could tell wasn't a big fan of AEW, but both of them sounded pretty frustrated with kind of wrestling in general, a little bit. But yeah, Brian definitely did seem to not be as big of a fan of AEW comparatively.
Yeah. All right. I've said my piece. Any final thoughts on Jim Cornette before we shut the show down?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, folks, we're going to keep this this little program going, not about Jim Cornette, but about wrestling fandom. And I've got a couple ideas on the pike, but next week we are going to introduce Coltrane to yet another core component of wrestling fandom, and that is the miniseries Dark Side of the Ring. We are going to talk about this incredibly popular, I guess I'd call it a docudrama series, and we're going to start with the very first episode. So if you know Dark Side of the Ring, you might know what this episode is. You've probably seen it. If you have never checked it out, this is your chance to check it out. We are going to all watch season 1, episode 1 of the Dark Side of the Ring, which I believe is about Randy Macho Man Savage and Elizabeth and their life.
Oh yeah.
Their life in and out of the ring. Yeah. So
the legend himself.
Yeah. So we're gonna watch that. We're gonna talk about it, and then I've got a couple ideas for what we're gonna do after that. But we're gonna kind of explore these avenues of fandom. A couple things I want to put out there. If you guys have someone that you think that we should talk about while we explore this, please let me know. Send an email or a tweet. You can tweet at the Shoe Boots. You can email wrestlinglosers@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'm currently thinking I definitely want to do a thing about Simon Miller. He's come up a few times here, and maybe what culture in general, for those of you that are familiar. I don't know if that'll fill an entire episode, but knowing us, it probably will. We'll figure it out. Anyways, any others? And also, I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about the Attitude Era. I would love to do a program down the road where we can properly introduce Coltrane to the Attitude Era. But I'm not really sure how to do that other than like going back and rewatching it myself and penning down episodes of Raw that he should watch or whatever. But if anyone knows any good documentaries about the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, all that stuff that you think would be good, please send them my way. I would love to check them out and see if it's a good fit. So I really appreciate that. Also, if you have any other emails or messages you'd like to send, we will read them on the air if you like. Please let us know if you don't want us to, because the assumption is you would like. But otherwise, that's going to do it for tonight. For me, for Colt, and for Tex. Later, losers.